This video is provided for you to give you some guidance as you create your qualifying presentation from your pre-proposal paper. You've been provided a template that we want you to use as an outline for your presentation. You can add additional slides within each of that slides of that outline as needed, but we want you to stay with that, and that gives us some consistency throughout the presentations as we analyze them for, this is additional data beyond your pre-proposal paper that will help us determine your readiness to pursue your formal study as you pursue your doctoral degree. I've provided two things to help guide you. One is in italics and in green font. There's some explanatory notes that I'm providing to help you out. And then I provide an example. In an example of this video, I've used a study that I have done as kind of to give you a picture of what that might look like in a particular type of study that I've done here. The title page is self-explanatory. One of the things I'll say, I know your title may not be exactly clear to you at this point. That's okay. Just make your best effort at it. It can change, and that's okay too. But do the best you can to create a title that you feel like reflects what you're going to be doing. And, of course, your contact information. In the introduction, and this will be a consistent theme throughout the video, is to use bullet points and try to discuss and verbalize your explanations, elaborate, I guess is a better term, on each one. I guess another way to say it, we don't want you to just read a PowerPoint. That defeats the purpose of this activity. The purpose is to let us know, give us that additional piece of information that you have at least a high level, or what we feel like is a high level of understanding of your study and your readiness to pursue it further. So in this example, I've shown three big areas that I would talk about on the study example. Notice I've just put bullet points there, and it gives me a talking point to be able to launch off from that. And then I'd narrow that down a little bit more. So, well, here's the problem. And again, as I mentioned earlier, list the high points of the problem and elaborate on that. As you go through this, it should frame to us, the question I like to ask students is, well, why is this a problem? And one of the things you're going to explain to us is who says it's a problem or what says it's a problem. And that helps us determine to what extent, yeah, okay, this is something that is worthy of study in the future, for your doctoral work. And of course, the all-important theoretical framework. Every study should have some basis for justifying your assumptions about the problem. And I've listed two major frames of theoretical framework for this example. Yours may have three, it may have one. Who knows? It depends on your study and what your problem is and what literature is available for that. But there certainly should be something around the theoretical framework. Here's some things I've used as bullets underneath that to give me talking points. Yours may look completely different from that. And then elaborate on the purpose, as we've talked about before. Just give us your thoughts. What's the purpose of this? And here's an example. And I look at the purpose as a kind of a big picture overview, whereas the research questions, as I've mentioned in the explanatory note, would be much more concise of accomplishing this purpose. And the research questions, in lieu of, as I've mentioned before, reading them word for word, because the professor's already received a copy, so they've seen the research questions, I would elaborate on parts of it that need a little additional explanation. In this case, I might elaborate a little bit about STAR, that is the Texas State Assessment, and the different areas that represent instructional expenditures. And a little later, I'll elaborate a little more about why those were chosen. But I might just say, for example, in this case, this is the Texas Education Agency's representation of a ratio of instructional expenditures. And this is from the National Center. And the reason we're using the two different ones is because they represent, each one of them are developed with different categorical expenditures. So it might be good to know in the study If in fact there is a relationship, does one particular definition provide a better picture than another or not? The significance of the study, list some bullet points, elaborate on each one. And your literature review. Try to find kind of the big areas of your literature review, list those as bullet points, and then list and discuss a few authors and studies that would that fit under each one of those. I think that would be the best way to do it. This could be extremely long, so try to be as concise as possible on this as you remember, because we have your papers. We've seen the totality of what you have at this point, but we want to see see and hear your thinking on this. And then your anticipated design. We realize this can change, but this is what you're thinking at this point would work for a design. It doesn't mean that you're not ready if the design is not necessarily going to work, but it does tell us that you've thought through some things regarding how you might attack this particular problem and in what methods you might use. In the example I've shown here, I'm using a quantitative research design, using descriptive and linear statistical techniques, showing some examples of what that might look like in general. And then I'm going to carry that a little forward in talking about the subjects and data collection. And I would talk in a little more detail about each one of these and why I've chosen those as inclusion in the design to address the problem. And then those data points continue right here. And because you could copy a slide, duplicate a slide if you need to, and then add more to it as it will work with your particular study. And then a summary. The projected timeline. I've shown a projected timeline based on this type of methodology and the things I already know about, or I would know about the study and timeline. Your timeline may be very different depending on how you plan to address or conduct your design. Give us a few points on what issues you think you may have. For example, if you're doing a qualitative study, you're going to use subjects. Talk about, here's what I'd like to do. I do see some issues with it, and maybe how you plan to address that. Or you could even elaborate on saying, here's something that you're going to need some additional help on getting down to the fine tuning of that, which that's expected. The purpose of this is not, is necessary to say, hey, you're ready for proposal right now, as much as is your study to a point where we can begin to have those formal conversations about that, and some closing comments of why this is important to you, and that's really all you need to do on the qualifying experience. Let us know if you have any questions or need additional information, and best of luck to you.